Mary Elizabeth Thompson sat by the window of her suburban California home, where golden afternoon sunlight filtered through thin curtains, casting rays on her face, etched with the wrinkles of time. At 68, a widow living alone since her husband George passed away from a sudden heart attack 5 years ago, the house with its small backyard garden and rose bushes she tended herself was once the heart of a happy family. Now it was merely a repository of bittersweet memories with Max, her loyal golden retriever, the only companion who never abandoned her. Mary had sacrificed her entire life for her family. She vividly recalled those years working tirelessly at the local grocery store, her feet swollen from standing 8 hours a day to scrape together enough money for John, her only son, to attend college. John had been her pride, a bright, cheerful boy who hugged her tightly whenever she returned home late. She sold her gold wedding ring to pay off his debts after his first divorce, and even borrowed from friends to help him buy a house when he remarried. "You're everything to me, Mom," she had whispered to him on nights when he cried over work failures. She sacrificed her health, sleep, and personal dreams like a trip to Europe she once longed for to ensure John had a better life. But now, as she aged, those sacrifices seemed forgotten. Max entered her life like a gift from fate. Adopted from a shelter 6 years ago, when loneliness threatened to overwhelm her, Max was more than a pet. He was her companion, her sole comfort. Every morning he woke her with a cold, wet nose nudging her hand, and every evening he curled up at her feet as she read. During a fierce rainstorm, he had saved her once when she slipped on the porch and couldn't get up. Max barked relentlessly, drawing a neighbor's help despite being soaked and shivering. Mary often said, "You're the last honest heart in this house," stroking him as tears rolled down her cheeks. Max never judged, never demanded, only loved her unconditionally. That fateful afternoon began like any other. Mary was brewing tea in the kitchen, the faint scent of green tea mingling with the roses from the garden. She heard Max barking joyfully on the porch, then suddenly falling silent. Stepping outside, her heart stopped. On the wooden floor lay a warm piece of bacon-stuffed beef wrapped in foil, Max's favorite treat. He had eaten half his tail, wagging happily as usual. But within seconds he staggered. His legs trembled, his eyes clouded, and his tongue curled unnaturally. Mary knelt clutching him, her heart pounding. "Max, Max, my love." "No," she screamed inwardly, but her lips stayed silent, her trembling hands fumbling to unlock her phone and call 911. By the time the ambulance arrived, Max lay still, his body warm but lifeless. She sat there, tears streaming like rain, the smell of bacon mixed with blood making her nauseous. Max, her last friend, her loyal heart, was gone. John walked in then, fresh from the gym, sweat glistening on his tight t-shirt. Holding a coffee cup, he glanced at Max's body with a calm expression, as if checking the weather. "It's just a dog, Mom. Get over it." His words cut into Mary's heart like a knife. She looked up at her son, eyes red, hoping for a trace of regret or sorrow, but John just scrolled through Instagram, sighing as if she were bothering him. What did you say?" she whispered, her voice breaking. John didn't look at her, only shook his head. "You're getting forgetful, Mom." He was old. He turned and walked away, leaving her alone with her searing pain. She sat there, cradling Max's body, feeling the world crumble. Her son, the one she had given everything for now, dismissed Max's death as trivial. How could he? She recalled when John played with Max as a child, hugging him and laughing brightly. Now it all felt like an illusion. Mary didn't cry loudly. She stayed silent like a storm without thunder. She wrapped Max in his favorite blue blanket adorned with tiny paw prints, placing a photo of them in the garden, her, in gardening gloves, Max muddy on her lap under his chin. She dug his grave herself in the backyard, her knees aching, her back screaming, but she didn't care. Each shovelful was a pang of grief, a question why she buried Max under the cherry tree where he loved to nap. That night she lay in bed clutching Max's old leash, like prayer beads, her mind spinning. The wind rattled the shutters, and she swore Max's final bark echoed. The next morning, suspicion crept in. She checked the trash bin on the porch, detecting a strange, bitter metallic smell. Inside was foil identical to the one with the meat coated with a sticky yellow powder like old glue. She wrapped it carefully and stored it in the freezer. Keep it, her instincts urged. John returned from the gym, tossing his keys on the counter, eyeing her as if expecting an apology. "You okay, Mom?" he asked, not looking up from his protein shake. She nodded, and he smiled a smile that felt like checking off a task. Then he repeated, "It's just a dog, Mom." She didn't sleep that night, lying awake, sensing a darkness enveloping the house. Mary began to realize this wasn't an accident. Where did that meat come from? John had once told her to stop making bacon-stuffed beef, calling it too greasy and outdated. But Max loved it, and now he was dead because of it. She recalled subtle changes, John visiting more often, not to check on her, but to help checking finances, suggesting assisted living. A chill ran down her spine. Could her own son, her flesh and blood, have done something horrific? The pain of betrayal gnawed at her, intertwined with her longing for Max. She had sacrificed so much, and now perhaps she was being pushed out of her life. But Mary wasn't weak. Beneath her aging exterior was a woman who had overcome countless hardships. She chose silence and observation, for some storms arrive without sound. Her story was just beginning and colder than anyone could imagine. If you're following and feel moved by Mary's pain, please, leave a one-word comment with your emotion and subscribe not to miss the next part. Where are you watching from? What time is it? Share to connect with us. California's sunshine remained radiant the morning after Max's death, but Mary Elizabeth Thompson's home felt shrouded in an invisible fog. She sat at the dining table, clutching a cold teacup, her gaze fixed on the empty chair where Max used to curl up. Her breathing was heavy, each breath carrying the weight of loss and growing suspicion. John, her son, entered the kitchen in a tight athletic outfit with a faint smile. He placed an expensive oat milk latte on the table, its sweet aroma overpowering the room. "Sleep well, Mom?" he asked, his voice flat, devoid of genuine concern. Mary nodded, lips pressed tight, hiding the storm of emotions within. She couldn't forget John's cold words from the previous night. "It's just a dog, Mom. Get over it." Now, as morning light lit his face, she noticed something different. John's eyes no longer held the warmth of the boy who cried in her arms after failures. They were sharp, calculating, like a chess player particular about victory. "Mom, I think you need more rest," John said, sitting across from her, scrolling his phone. "You look tired, forgetful and slow. I'm worried it's not safe for you to be alone." His words were gentle, but Mary sensed their falseness. They weren't a son's concern, but a coercive suggestion. She recalled years of sacrifice. When John was young, she stayed up late sewing clothes for him, unable to afford new ones. She abandoned her dream of becoming an artist to work extra hours, ensuring John could attend college. After his first divorce, she opened her home, letting him stay, cooking his favorite meals, and listening to his laments about life. She sold her small suburban house to help him buy this one where she now lived, hoping he'd build a stable future. But now this house felt like a trap. John didn't want her here anymore. She felt it like a beast cornered. "Mom, I invited someone to talk to you this afternoon," John continued, his voice scripted. "She's a transitional health specialist to help you understand better options." Mary's heart raced. "What options?" she asked, striving for calm. John smiled a smile she once thought warm, but now saw as chilling, like assisted living. "You'd have friends your age, prepared meals and nurses. You'd be happier." The word happier sounded like a threat. Mary didn't respond, staring at her tea, the undissolved sugar pooling at the bottom. She realized John didn't want her happy, he wanted her gone. That afternoon, a young woman named Claire entered. Blonde in a beige sweater, has an overly bright, almost artificial smile. "Hello, Mrs. Thompson. I'm a transitional health specialist," Claire introduced herself, her voice being syrupy. She glided through the living room, touching chair backs, eyeing the stairs and saying, "Oh, these stairs could be tricky for someone your age." Mary offered coffee, but Claire declined, pulling out brochures with photos of older adults, smiling too widely on patios wearing identical cardigans in different colors. "This is the life you deserve," Claire said, her voice smooth as a rehearsed speech. Mary smiled faintly, but inside she felt pushed out of her life. When Claire left, John appeared with a gold-wrapped gift box tied with a red bow. "I was going to wait, but here's an early surprise," he said, sliding it toward her. Mary opened it, her heart sinking. A navy suitcase, 4 wheels lightweight, easy to move. She looked at John, but he only smiled as if he'd done something kind. "You'll need it when you move," he said, his voice soft but sharp as a blade. Mary clutched the suitcase, feeling as if she were holding betrayal itself. That night she found an envelope on the printer, her name typed neatly, "Advanced Healthcare Directive, Mary Elizabeth Thompson." Flipping through a highlighted line froze her blood. "In case of incapacity, medical decisions shall be made by John Michael Thompson." Her signature was at the bottom, but she swore she'd never signed it. Someone had forged it. She sat in the dark, clutching the suitcase, her heart heavy. John wasn't just pushing her into assisted living. He was seizing control of her life, her assets, her health, everything. She recalled years of sleepless nights worrying for John, and now he saw her as clutter to be cleared. But Mary didn't cry or scream. She sat in silence, a storm brewing within. She thought of Max, the strange yellow powder on the foil, and John's smile. Instinct told her this wasn't random. John had changed, or perhaps he was never the son she trusted. Mary stood, opened the freezer, and checked the hidden foil. The chemical smell lingered, a warning. She wrapped it tighter, storing it deep in the freezer. Then she took Max's old leash, winding it around her hand, the rough nylon a reminder of lost loyalty. She didn't sleep, but her eyes gleamed in the dark. John thought her weak, easily controlled. He was wrong. She'd sacrificed her life for him, but now she'd fight to reclaim it. A sharp thought flashed like a blade's glint. "If you want to push me out, John, I'll make you regret it." She closed her eyes not to sleep, but to plan. The storm had arrived, and it would show no mercy. Morning light streamed through the living room window, but Mary Elizabeth Thompson's home felt darker than ever. The scent of John's oat milk latte lingered, a reminder of his presence not as a son, but as someone usurping her life. Sitting in her worn armchair, Mary stroked Max's leash, her eyes scanning the wall where family photos once hung. But now the frames had changed. Her wedding photo with George, the picture of her holding John after his first divorce, and her favorite, her in gardening gloves with muddy Max on her lap, were all gone and replaced by new photos: John's college graduation, John and Sarah's wedding, and John with a smug smile. It was as if she had never existed. Mary stood approaching the wall, her hand touching the space where her wedding photo once hung. "John, where's my photo?" she asked, her voice soft but sharp as a blade. John, wiping the kitchen counter, didn't look up. "Oh, I thought we'd freshen things up," he said, his tone flat like reading the news. "Less clutter, you know. Minimalism." Minimalism. The word echoed in Mary's mind, an insult. Her memories, years of sacrifice, sleepless nights for John, dreams she gave up for his future, were now called clutter. She looked at him, searching for the boy who cried in her arms, but saw only a stranger with a cold smile and emotionless eyes. She returned to her chair, her heart heavy. She recalled tough years working 2 jobs to pay John's tuition, standing for hours in the supermarket, counting pennies for his textbooks. When John failed at his first job, she sold her cherished book collection, books she dreamed of reading in retirement, to cover his debts. "Mom, I'll never forget what you've done for me," John had said, eyes teary. But those words were lies. He hadn't just forgotten. He was deliberately erasing her from this house, from his life. That night, Mary checked the safe in her closet where she kept cash and important documents. Kneeling, her knees creaking, she dialed her birth date, a code John knew. When the safe opened, her heart plummeted. Empty. No money, no papers, just a sticky note filed digitally. By whom? Where Mary sat on the floor, her breath ragged. She recalled recent months when John helped with her finances, saying she was forgetful and needed him. She had trusted him, thinking it was a son's care. Now she saw it was part of a plan. The next morning, she called the bank, her voice feigning innocence like a naive older woman. "Hello, I'd like to check recent transactions," she said, gripping the phone. The woman hesitated. "Mrs. Thompson, our records show you authorized your son John Michael Thompson to manage your accounts 3 months ago." Mary's blood ran cold. "And he mentioned you're having memory issues," the woman added, her tone sympathetic. Mary hung up silent. She stared at the sugar jar on the kitchen counter, the word sweet, now a mockery. John hadn't just taken her money, he'd painted a narrative that she could no longer manage her life. That evening, her 17-year-old granddaughter Emily visited, wearing an oversized hoodie, her sad eyes hidden behind messy hair. "Grandma, can I have some leftover lasagna?" Emily asked, her voice trembling as if hiding something. Mary nodded, poured herself a ginger ale, and they sat in silence. Emily scrolled her phone, then looked up. "Grandma, when are you moving?" Mary froze. "Moving? What do you mean?" Emily bit her lip, hesitant. "Dad said this house will be ours soon. He's planning a game room, after you retire or something." She gave a nervous laugh, her eyes red. Before leaving, Emily paused in the hallway, staring at the photo wall. "You used to be in the middle," she whispered, then left. Emily's words were a final stab. Mary stood still, feeling erased. This house where she poured sweat and tears was now John's property in his eyes. The photo wall lacked not just her, but Max the dog, who was her last comfort. She recalled Max lying beside her when she cried from exhaustion, when she felt worthless. Max never judged, never betrayed. But John, the son for whom she sacrificed everything, was rewriting their family story, and she no longer existed. Mary sat in the dark, clutching Max's leash, a nameless anger rising. She didn't cry or scream. Instead, she began to think. John thought her weak, easily manipulated, expecting her to enter assisted living, leaving everything to him meekly. But she wasn't one to give up. She had sacrificed her life to protect her family. Now she'd fight to defend herself, a plan formed in her mind, sharp and silent as a blade honed in the dark. In her suburban California home, Mary Elizabeth Thompson sat quietly in the small room once used for crafts, the dim yellow light illuminating forgotten skeins of yarn. It was late, but she couldn't sleep. Max's leash remained wrapped around her hand, an anchor keeping her from despair. After the horrific discoveries, the missing photos, the empty safe, John's control over her bank account, and Emily's innocent but painful words, Mary felt on the edge of a precipice. But instead of falling, she chose silence. Silence wasn't surrender. It was how she gathered strength like a predator awaiting its moment. Her eyes fell to the floor, where an old baby monitor lay hidden behind a box of yarn once used when Emily was a toddler, but now forgotten. An idea sparked. Mary carefully picked it up, checked the cord, and tucked it into a narrow gap behind the bookshelf, aiming the microphone toward the living room. She didn't know what she was seeking, but instinct told her John and his wife Sarah were hiding something. To protect herself, she needed the truth. She switched on the monitor, a faint hum breaking the quiet, and John's voice cut through. He said low and tense, "I thought we'd already convinced her." Sarah's reply was sharp as shattered glass. "She's dragging it out, playing innocent, acting confused. She signed the healthcare directive. She'll forget, a soft laugh, not cruel but cold, like discussing business. In 2 weeks, the assisted living spot will open. Stay calm." Mary sat frozen. Her breath caught. The words assisted living pierced her heart like a dagger. They weren't helping her. They were burying her alive, not with dirt, but with paperwork, forged signatures, and fake smiles. She recalled her sacrifices, skipping meals to buy John basketball shoes, staying up late to write his scholarship letters, declining a good man's proposal because John needed her. Now he called her she, as if she were a problem to solve. Mary gripped Max's leash, the nylon rubbing her skin, a reminder she couldn't be weak. The next morning, she rummaged through the garage, finding John's old hunting bag before his second divorce. The zipper still worked, revealing gloves, a flashlight, and receipts. One caught her eye, a pharmacy receipt from 3 weeks ago for a drug, not in her name, but matching a bottle once near her tea. She recalled the bitter tea she'd poured out, suspicious. Now the pieces fit. The yellow powdered foil, the bitter tea, Max's death, it wasn't random. John, whom she trusted, might have poisoned her dog, perhaps even her. She tucked the receipt away, her heart pounding not from fear, but rising anger. That afternoon, Emily visited her oversized hoodie, nearly hiding her face. "Grandma, can I have some ginger ale?" she asked, her eyes avoiding Mary's. Mary poured a glass, noticing Emily's trembling hands. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Emily bit her lip, then pulled a red USB from her backpack. "I found this in Dad's laptop," she whispered. "Fake documents, your signature, and the camera app you installed. I saw everything." Mary froze but stayed calm. "What else?" she asked. Emily hesitated, then said, "I tested a tea bag at school in chem class. It's poisoned, Grandma. Not strong, but enough to make you tired." Her voice broke. "I wasn't spying, I just needed to know if I was crazy." Mary hugged Emily, feeling her slight body shake. She spoke slowly, firmly about her sacrifices. She'd sold her art collection to pay John's debts after his first bankruptcy. She'd abandoned her dream of opening a flower shop to care for him during his depression. "I gave your dad everything," Mary said, eyes blazing, "and now he wants to take everything from me." Emily nodded, tears streaming. "I'm so angry, Grandma. They don't see me think I'm just listening to music, but I hear everything. They talk about assisted living and selling your jewelry." She pulled a small ring from her pocket, Mary's wedding ring, which had been missing for a year. They were going to pawn it. I took it back. Emotions surged in Mary like a tidal wave. She held Emily's hand, gratitude mixed with pain. Her granddaughter, whom she'd cradled as a baby, was now her only ally. She shared more about Max, how he saved her in a storm, and how he stayed by her when John was too busy. "Max wasn't just a dog," she said. "He was why I could still smile." Emily nodded, eyes red. "I want to help you. I don't want you taken away." Mary stroked her hair, feeling strength return. She said, "We'll fight, Emily, not with shouts, but smarts." That night, Mary sat at the table, Emily's USB before her. She plugged it into her old laptop, revealing forged contracts, copied signatures, and property transfer plans. Each line was a stab, but also ammunition for the coming battle. She looked out the window, the moonlight hitting the garden where Max was buried. "I won't let them win, Max," she whispered. John and Sarah thought her weak, manipulable, but they didn't know that in her silence a plan was forming to reclaim her life step by step, with Emily by her side. In the small room of her suburban California home, Mary Elizabeth Thompson sat at an old wooden table, the desk lamp casting light on her face, highlighting wrinkles of resilience. Max's leash lay beside the red USB from Emily's symbols of betrayal and loyalty. After the painful discoveries, missing photos, an empty safe, forged documents, and John and Sarah's overheard plot, Mary was no longer the woman who only sacrificed. She'd turned pain into fire, ready to fight. That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she opened her laptop, the screen's blue glow stinging her eyes, and typed 2 words into the search bar: free legal aid. Mary recalled her sacrifices for John. She'd abandoned her dream of an art studio to work extra hours funding his business degree. She used her retirement savings to help him start over when he was laid off, even if it meant living frugally. "I'll pay you back, Mom," John had promised, eyes hopeful. But those words were lies. He didn't just want her in assisted living, he aimed to seize everything: her home, her dignity. But Mary was no longer the giving mother. She'd learned that to protect herself, she must act not with screams, but with intelligence and patience. The next morning, she bought a prepaid phone with cash at a corner store, leaving no trace. She drove to the downtown public library, where no one knew her. Mary registered for an online elder law seminar in a quiet corner, surrounded by the smell of old books and rustling pages. The presenter, Laura Hayes, a San Francisco lawyer, appeared on screen with a loose bun and a cat-themed sweater. But Laura's voice was sharp, authoritative. "You're not crazy," Laura said after hearing Mary's story in a private call. "You're trapped. Power abuse, financial manipulation, possibly document fraud." Terms like power abuse and document fraud pierced Mary's heart like needles, but they also sparked hope. For the first time, her story was acknowledged and named. Laura outlined the first steps: establish a new trust to protect assets, revoke prior authorizations, and gather evidence of John's actions. Act fast but discreetly, Laura stressed. They think you're weak. That's your advantage. Mary took meticulous notes, each word a bullet loaded into an invisible gun. Back home, she hid the notes in a fireproof box under a creaky floorboard in her closet. She bought a prepaid debit card labeled Emergency and stored it with the foil containing yellow powder from the trash. Each action was a step in the dark, but Mary felt control returning. That evening, John appeared in the kitchen, his usual smug demeanor intact. "Where were you all day, Mom?" he asked, eyeing her suspiciously. Mary smiled softly. "Just a walk, son." She knew he was watching her, but didn't think she was watching back. Through the baby monitor hidden behind the bookshelf, she heard his talk with Sarah after she went upstairs. "She's still lucid," John said, irritated. "But not for long. A few more weeks and it's done." Sarah chuckled. "Give her the tea like last time." Mary clenched her fists, anger flaring, but she stayed silent. The tea, once thought a gesture of love, was now a weapon against her. She recalled John's unappreciated sacrifices. After his second divorce, she spent months comforting him, cooking his favorite dishes, and even paying his lawyer. She thought it was a mother's duty, but now she sees that John sees her as a resource to exploit each time she gives. She looked at the fireproof box, holding Max's leash, the foil, and Laura's notes reminders she was no longer a victim. She'd sacrificed too much, and now she'd use that patience to fight back. Mary opened her journal, an old notebook once used for recipes. Amid cookies and pumpkin soup pages, she wrote one word in black ink: war. It wasn't a call to violence, but a declaration she wouldn't let John and Sarah steal her life. She thought of Emily, the girl who stood by her, a light in the dark. Her determined granddaughter was why she kept going. Mary wasn't just fighting for herself, but for Emily, so she'd never feel erased. That night, she imagined him listening by the window, looking at the garden where Max was buried, and the moonlight on the cherry tree. "I'll do it, Max," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I'll make them pay." She was no longer just a sacrificing mother. She was a warrior, her battle just beginning with Laura Emily and her inner fire by her side. In the darkness of her small room, Mary Elizabeth Thompson sat in her old armchair, streetlight glow illuminating her sharp eyes. The fireproof box under the floor held Max's leash, the suspect foil, and Laura Hayes's notes pieces of the silent war she was waging. After eavesdropping on John and Sarah's plot to force her into assisted living, and with Emily's USB of forged evidence, Mary was no longer just a sacrificing mother. She'd turned pain into a weapon, deciding on her boldest move, yet buying the house next door to monitor John's every step unnoticed. Mary recalled her sacrifices, abandoning personal dreams to raise John. She declined an art scholarship to work extra hours, ensuring he could buy his first car. After his second divorce, she loaned him savings, meaning she lived more frugally. "I'll never forget, Mom," John had said, but those words were fleeting. He wasn't just betraying her, he was erasing her as if she were an obstacle. But Mary wasn't the submissive woman anymore. She'd learned that to protect herself, she must act discreetly yet decisively. The next morning, she contacted Laura via email from the public library, using her prepaid phone for secrecy. Laura suggested a bold step: create an anonymous trust and buy a new property to safeguard her interests. Mary found a small house next door, an old ranch with faded shingles and a cracked porch swing bank-owned, sold for cash. Guided by Laura, Mary transferred funds from her secret account into the trust enough to buy without raising suspicion. She signed under Patricia E. Thompson Living Trust, leaving no personal trace. In 10 days, she owned the house keys in hand, a sense of freedom stirring. Mary moved in without a word, needing little: an old mattress, a folding chair, a coffee maker, and the fireproof box. She had a clear view of John's driveway from her new living room window. Before leaving, she installed a hidden camera in fake ivy in the old kitchen, linked to a laptop app. She sat in her folding chair each night, watching John and Sarah's movements. She saw John leave early, Sarah carry shopping bags, and Emily trudge to school, earbuds in, head down. One night she saw John shredding papers in the garage and arguing on the phone. "She's still here, but not for long," he said. Mary smiled coldly. He didn't know she was next door watching everything. One afternoon, Emily noticed. She froze at the new house's door, eyes wide mouth agape. "Grandma, you live here," she whispered, as if afraid to break a spell. Mary nodded, pouring herself a ginger ale. "Why?" Emily asked, sitting on the porch. Mary looked away, voice low. "Your dad thinks I don't exist." Emily didn't laugh or speak, sitting silently beside her. Mary shared more forgotten sacrifices, skipping new clothes so John could travel caring for Emily when John was busy. "I thought family was everything," Mary said, "but now I must save myself." Emily's eyes teared up. "I'll help you," she whispered. Through the camera, Mary saw Sarah enter the kitchen that night, holding documents. Regarding the updated power of attorney and property transfers, Sarah read coldly. "We need her signature while she's still useful. Give her the tea like before." John nodded, smirking. "She won't suspect." Mary clenched her fists, anger blazing. The tea, once a loving gesture, was a tool to control her. She recalled Max collapsing from poisoned meat, realizing John didn't just want her assets, but was willing to harm her. But she wasn't afraid. She had Emily, Laura, and a plan. In her journal, Mary wrote that they think I'm invisible, but I see all. Her sacrifices, putting John above her health dreams' happiness, became strength. She wasn't just fighting for herself, but for Emily to spare her betrayal. From her new home, she watched, waited, and planned. John and Sarah thought they controlled the game, but Mary had shifted from prey to hunter. Every move, every word was recorded. The hidden camera monitor and her sharp gaze were her new weapons. She stepped onto the new porch, looking at the old garden where Max rested. "I won't let them win, Max," she whispered. The moonlight lit her face, no longer that of a submissive mother, but a woman ready to fight the world to reclaim her life. John and Sarah thought they were ahead, but Mary knew she held the final card. Under California's misty moonlight, Mary Elizabeth Thompson sat in her new house next door. The laptop's glow illuminating her face where wrinkles told of both age and resilience. The fireproof box with Max's leash, the suspect foil, and Laura Hayes's notes were on the table. Through the hidden camera, she'd seen Sarah urge John to use tea to manipulate her, and she heard their plans for assisted living. Emily, her granddaughter, became an unexpected ally, bringing a USB with forged evidence. But Mary knew evidence wasn't enough. She needed a watertight legal plan to defeat John, built step by step in the shadows. Mary recalled sacrifices she thought were her duty. When John was young, she gave up her dream of traveling to fund her graduate studies. She worked weekends, feet numb behind a cashier, to buy him a suit for his first interview. After his second marriage failed, she opened her home, cooked his favorite meals, and listened to his woes. "I'll never leave you alone," Mom John had promised, but that was a lie. He wasn't just betraying her, he was stealing her freedom and dignity. But Mary wasn't just a giving woman anymore. She'd turned pain into strength, ready to protect herself. She began by sending John's bitter tea to an independent lab using prepaid card funds. The emailed results made her heart race, traces of a sedative not lethal, but enough to make her tired and confused. She recalled Max's death, the yellow powdered meat, realizing John didn't just want control, but was willing to harm her. She stored the lab results in the fireproof box beside the pharmacy receipt from John's hunting bag. Each piece was a bullet preparing an unbreakable legal weapon. Mary contacted Laura via an encrypted library call. Sharp yet warm, Laura sent a secure folder with documents revoking prior authorizations, a new trust draft, and a certified mental competency declaration from a licensed neurologist. The previous week, Mary secretly met this doctor, acing math, memory, and logic tests with clarity. "I'm not just lucid," she told the camera. "I'm patient." The video and blood tests for toxins were Laura's undeniable evidence. Mary added a trust clause. If family betrayed her assets, would go to the youngest generation, Emily, and elder abuse prevention groups. One afternoon, checking the camera, Mary got a surprise call. Patty. The hoarse, familiar voice stopped her heart. Only one person called her that: William Dawson, her first love before her husband. She thought he died in a 1984 accident, but he'd only moved to Arizona, living quietly. I heard about your situation, William said. I have papers proving you were coerced a 1979 will when we dreamed of a Tennessee cabin. Mary sat hands trembling. William wasn't just alive. He'd testify for her. Still got that fire? He asked warmly. She smiled for the first time in months, more than ever. William arrived one evening in a dusty rental car carrying papers and a worn guitar. He'd aged, but his eyes shone like the man who promised to conquer the world with her. They sat on her new porch watching John's driveway. William said he doesn't know who he's up against, strumming softly. Mary nodded, feeling like Patty again, the woman who dared dream big before duty trapped her. She shared her sacrifices, forgoing art school for John, crying alone after her husband's death, and Max saving her from loneliness. Now Max was gone, but William and Emily were new lights. Mary wrote in her journal, "I'm not fighting alone." She thought of Emily, who defied her parents, and William, who returned from her past to help. They fueled her resolve. Through the camera, she saw Sarah check kitchen documents, whispering to John, "We need her signature before she suspects." Mary smiled coldly. They didn't know she was steps ahead. Each piece T-test competency video was part of her plan. She didn't just want to protect assets, but to send a message she wasn't prey. That night, she stood by the window looking at the old house where John and Sarah slept, thinking they'd won. She stroked Max's leash, whispering, "I'll do it, Max. They'll pay." Her inner fire burned not to destroy, but to rebirth. With Laura, Emily, and William, Mary was ready to flip the board. Her fight wasn't just for freedom, but to prove that she couldn't be erased despite betrayal. California's afternoon sun streamed through her new home's window, but Mary Elizabeth Thompson sat in shadow, her eyes gleaming with cold determination. On the table was the fireproof box with the poison T-test neurologist's competency declaration and William's testimony. Guided by Laura, allied with Emily, and supported by William, Mary was ready for her riskiest move, feigning illness to trap John and Sarah. She didn't just want to protect her assets, she wanted their false triumph to crumble. She recalled eternal sacrifices, sleepless nights, nursing sick John, neglecting her health for his dreams. Now she'd use her body as a weapon, turning pain into an illusion to deceive the betrayers. Mary practiced nightly before a mirror, tilting her head, parting her lips, clouding her eyes, stammering. Each gesture was part of a play approved by Laura to avoid suspicion. She thought of Max killed by poison anger flaring. John didn't just want her wealth, but was willing to ruin her health. But Mary wasn't afraid. She'd sacrificed too much art dreams, friend outings for John's better life. Now she'd use that patience to turn the tables. Church bells echoed faintly that Sunday as Sarah arrived with homemade chicken soup. "Mom, I brought you soup," Sarah said, her smile sweet but eyes calculating. "Eat, it's good for you." Mary smiled weakly, taking the bowl, the familiar herb scent wafting. She knew Sarah might have added something, but she'd use it to her advantage today. She sipped slowly enough twice to seem real, then set it down. Sitting on the sofa with a book, she let her head slump, lips part breathing shallow. Her eyes stayed open enough to see Sarah enter her spoon, clattering to the floor. Sarah Mary whispered feebly, stammering. Sarah panicked. John Mom's collapsed footsteps rushed. John burst in pale. "Call 911, she's not responding," he shouted, his voice mixing fake worry with hidden excitement. The ambulance wailed. Mary was carried out on a stretcher, her eyes still vague. In the hospital's cold white light, she continued the act. The doctor asked the date. She shook her head. "Today." "Tuesday." Sarah corrected Sunday Mom. Mary fumbled Sarah's name. "My daughter-in-law." "Emily." John cut in. "She's tired, doctor." His fleeting smile was triumphant, as if his plan had worked. Mary lay in the hospital bed, hearing John and Sarah whisper in the hall. "She's declining fast. John said, voice gleeful. "The doctor will certify and then we will sign everything." Sarah chuckled. "Perfect. 1 more week, the facility's ready." Their words stabbed Mary's heart, but she stayed calm. She recalled sacrifices when John was born premature. She remained in the hospital 3 months, refusing discharge to be with him. She gave up her dream job as a full-time homemaker, sacrificing her career for John's home life. Now he saw her as a burden to remove. But Mary didn't cry. She'd rehearsed this moment, and her play was flawless. When the nurse checked, Mary, lightly, grasped her hand, whispering, "Can you do me a favor?" The nurse, surprised, took a sealed envelope prepared by Laura. "Give this to the attending physician privately." Inside was the notarized competency declaration requesting, "Do not revoke rights without a second opinion." The nurse smiled subtly. "Smart lady." Mary nodded weakly, but inside she rejoiced. John and Sarah thought she was confused, but Laura had arranged everything: clean blood tests, competency video, and this envelope. Mary wasn't just acting, she controlled the play. Home after 2 days, Mary played the obedient patient. John guided her in voice sweet, "You need rest, Mom. We'll talk about long-term arrangements." She nodded, eyes cloudy, but her ears caught everything through the hidden monitor. That night, John poured wine, toasting Sarah. "1 more week, she'll sign everything." "We've won," Sarah laughed. "She doesn't even remember my name." Mary lay in bed, clutching Max's leash under her pillow, anger mixed with satisfaction. They thought her weak, but she was leading them into a trap. She thought of Emily, who warned her of Sarah's plan. Emily was why she persevered, the generation she'd shielded from betrayal. Mary recalled holding newborn Emily, silently vowing, "I won't let you be hurt." Through this act, she protects Emily and teaches her true strength not in shouts, but in patience and cunning. That night, Mary gazed out the window, moonlight on her face. She didn't regret the act. It wasn't deception, but justice. John and Sarah would soon see that the woman they thought was a victim was now the playwright. With every signature they expected, Mary prepared her final one on a document erasing their future. She whispered to the dark, "They'll pay Max. I promise." Her inner fire burned, ready for the climax. California's sun still shone brightly, but a storm was ready to erupt in Mary Elizabeth Thompson's heart. Sitting in her new home, she gazed through the window, her sharp eyes watching John's car in the old house's driveway. Beside her, the fireproof box held evidence-poisoned tea tests, a doctor's competency declaration, and William's testimony. With Laura Hayes's support and Emily's loyalty, Mary had transformed from victim to mastermind. Her hospital act convinced John and Sarah she was frail, manipulable. But today, on a bigger stage, a TV show, Mary would flip the board, exposing their betrayal to the world. Mary recalled sacrifices she thought eternal. When John was young, she abandoned her dream of opening a small gallery to work extra hours, ensuring he had textbooks. After his first divorce, she sold her mother's wedding gift piano to pay his debts. "Mom, I'll never let you down," John said, hugging her tightly. But those words were lies, and he'd tried to erase her from his life. But Mary was no longer the submissive mother. She'd turned pain into a weapon. Today, she'd use it to reclaim justice. One morning, John entered her new home holding documents and a smug smile. "Mom, great news!" he exclaimed, voice falsely excited. "I got us a spot on National Reel Network Family First Elder Edition. They want complex families, misunderstandings, and elder care issues. Just sign this, be yourself, and everyone will see your cooperation." Mary saw through his plan, portray her as a senile older woman on TV, reinforcing the need for assisted living. But she wasn't surprised. Emily had forwarded Sarah's text, "I'll cry on camera if needed. She'll look like the villain." Mary smiled, faintly sighed, and said, "All right, son." John didn't know Laura had contacted an old college friend, the show's producer, and William had recorded a legal deposition. 2 days later, Mary entered the studio, bright lights glaring on her face. She wore a green sweater, silver hair neatly combed, lips painted red, the shade she loved in youth. John and Sarah sat opposite, perfectly playing devoted son and daughter-in-law. The host, Deborah, with a professional smile and sharp eyes, introduced them first. "We love Mom," John said, voice choking. "But she's declining and we want what's best." Sarah wiped a non-existent tear, adding that seeing her like this is hard. The camera panned to the audience, some nodding sympathetically. Mary sat still, hands clasped, waiting. Deborah turned to her. "Mrs. Thompson, what would you like to share?" Mary took a deep breath and looked into the camera. Her voice was calm but sharp as a knife. "I'm not sick. I'm not confused. I'm awake." The room fell silent, whispers rippling. She reached under her seat, pulling out a thick folder and placing it on the table. "These are proofs, forged documents, poisoned tea tests, a video proving my lucidity and testimony from someone they didn't expect." The camera cut to backstage where William stepped out, tall eyes resolute. "I've known Mary for 43 years, he said. "She's been coerced by her son, and I'll testify." Sarah's mouth fell open and John paled. The audience held its breath. Mary continued, voice steady but robust. "I was erased from our family wall, bank accounts, and life. They used poisoned tea, forged signatures, and my trust to manipulate me." She laid out each document, test results, competency video, pharmacy receipt. Deborah scanned them, eyebrows raised. "This is very serious," she said. John tried to interrupt Mom. "You're mistaken." But his voice trembled, confidence gone. Sarah gripped his hand, her face stone-like. Mary looked into the camera, her voice resounding. "I sacrificed my life for my son, my dreams, health, happiness. But I won't let them bury me with papers and fake smiles." The audience applauded, some wiping tears. William nodded encouragingly from behind. Mary felt her heart lighten as if shedding a burden. The segment didn't air fully and was deemed too sensitive, but a leaked clip went viral. The hashtag #Don'tEraseGrandma trended, and Laura's inbox flooded with legal aid requests. John received a court summons and a cease and desist from the studio, his face ashen as he left. That night, Mary stroked Max's leash in her new home, reflecting on sacrifices she didn't regret. She'd forgone world travel to stay with John when he needed her. She'd sold jewelry for his basketball classes. But now she lived for herself and Emily, who helped her see light. Through the hidden camera, she saw John in the kitchen yelling into his phone, "She's destroyed us." Sarah was silent, eyes red. Mary smiled, not for victory, but for freedom. She'd faced betrayal, not with shouts, but with truth sharp as a blade. She stood, opening the window, letting California's night breeze in. "I did it, Max," she whispered, gazing at the starry sky. John and Sarah thought they could erase her, but in silence, Mary had rewritten her story, a story of an unyielding woman. Under the gentle dawn of a California coastal town, Mary Elizabeth Thompson sat on the porch of her new home, a small condo where the scent of sea salt and crashing waves mingled with seagull chirps. The old house where she'd poured her life's sacrifices was now the past.